Protestant Mary was the eldest child of James II, and for many years her father's heir. This didn't mean she got much say in how she lived her life. When she was 15, she had to marry William of Orange, a man 12 years older and several inches shorter than the English princess. But what looked like an unpromising match actually turned out rather well. Mary moved to the Netherlands and found she grew to like not only her new country, but even her new husband. She loved shopping for blue and white porcelain and started a popular craze for it. Back in England, much to the horror of the Protestants, James II's Catholic second wife, Mary of Modena, gave birth to a son, James Francis Edward Stuart. Mary was now pushed down into second place in the line for the throne, behind a Catholic baby. The Protestants were so alarmed by this turn of events that they invited Mary and her husband to invade and take old James's throne. This went well for the couple, who didn't even need to fight anyone, as James simply ran off. When William and Mary arrived, they were so welcome, their crowds turned and dressed in orange in their honour. Their arrival was known as the Glorious Revolution. Mary ruled alongside her husband, William. This was the only time that Britain has had joint rulers. Sadly, Mary died of smallpox when she was just 32, leaving a broken-hearted William to reign all alone. Crowning achievement. During the reign of William and Mary, the two monarchs accepted a new Bill of Rights, which took power from the Crown and gave it to Parliament. It limited the power of the monarch, meaning that the king or queen could no longer just make up laws or taxes whenever they felt like it, and set out the rights of Parliament, including the requirement for regular parliaments, free elections and freedom of speech in Parliament. Queen Mary was incredibly August 1714. She reigned between the 8th of March 1702 and the 1st of August 1714. Anne's was a popular but sad reign. She gave birth to 18 babies, but not one lived to grow up. Her beloved husband died. Her best friend bullied her, and unhappy Anne grew so fat that it took a special machine to get her onto squashed their rebellion and successfully continued to squash the series of Jacobite and foreign attempts to overthrow his rule. Surprisingly, the biggest threat to George's reign came not from the Jacobites, but from the world of finance. In 1719, people started to get very excited about a company called the South Sea Company, and thought that investing in it was a guaranteed way to make them rich. Well, of course, nothing is guaranteed to make you rich, and when the South Sea Company fell to pieces in 1720, many people, rich and poor, lost an awful lot of money. Angry and ruined, they looked for someone to blame, and George and his ministers seemed as good as anyone. Luckily for George, a clever minister called Robert Walpole stepped in and did his best to sort out the mess, and the king managed to steer clear of the scandal. George I died in 1727 on one of his many trips back to Hanover. In 1682, when he was still in Hanover, George Louis married his cousin, Sophia Dorothea Avencelin. They had 2 children together, one of whom was the future George II. But George Louis found out his wife had been having an affair with a Swedish count. It didn't seem to matter to anyone that George himself had children with another woman. This was outrageous. Suspiciously, the Swedish count very soon went missing. Some sources say he was murdered and thrown into the river, others that his body was later found hidden under palace floorboards. Sophia was divorced and imprisoned, never to walk free or see her children again. After George Louis had imprisoned his wife, little Prince George never saw his mother again, and relations between father and son became increasingly unfriendly. In fact, Prince George grew to hate his father. Then, to make matters much worse, George I decided to take away his son's children, only letting them see their parents once a week. It was a cruel and unnecessary thing to do, and it did him no favours with the British public. It may seem strange, but perhaps George I's crowning achievement as king was letting Parliament take increasing control. His lack of English language skills meant that he had to rely on his ministers to help manage affairs of state. After a while, he even stopped going to cabinet meetings and let the government make decisions without him. His reign saw the first real Prime Minister of Britain, Sir Robert Walpole, take charge. Now we go on to George II. George II lived between the 30th of October 1683 and the 25th of October 1760. He reigned between the 11th of June 1727 and the 25th of October 1760. Despite tensions between him and his father, George II was pretty similar to George I. He was initially rather son, Frederick, Prince of Wales, and although at least this George could speak English, the British public weren't his biggest fans either. The Jacobites were still grumbling about these Protestant Georges taking their throne, and once again in 1745 rebellion kicked off up north. This time it was led by Bonnie Prince Charlie, joined by the Scots, and actually seemed like it might succeed. The Hanoverian army was a mighty military machine, however, and the raggle-taggle Jacobites were no match for their fearsome force. The Battle of Culloden was an out-and-out victory for the king's men, and the Jacobite threat was quashed forever. Back in England, public opinion of George II changed for the better. He'd beaten the French and he'd beaten the Jacobites, and people began to be so impressed by their king's successes that a new song was written for the monarch, God Save the King. The only thorn in the king's side was his son, Frederick, Prince of Wales, who kept trying to stir up support for the king's political enemies and throwing parties for them. Frederick died in 1751, however, leaving the end of George II's reign pretty uneventful. It was said that George, when still a prince, had paid a visit to the court of Ansbach in disguise, hoping to check out a potential wife. Caroline of Ansbach in secret. Caroline clearly impressed young George, as the two were married shortly afterwards. The princess, later queen, would be dear to George throughout their marriage, in spite of his many mistresses. The king outlived his wife and insisted that upon his own death the two coffins be joined into one. It got to be much fun for the men who had to reopen Caroline's coffin. She'd been dead for over 20 years. George II was the last British monarch to lead an army into battle during the Continental War of the Austrian Succession in 1743, which Britain won. It did wonders for his popularity back home in Britain, and some of the British and Hanoverian armies' other military successes helped lay the foundations for the growth of the British Empire. And now we go on to George III. George III lived between the 4th of June 1738 and the 29th of January 1820, and he reigned between the 25th of October 1760 and the 29th of January 1820. George III was the grandson of George II. His father, Frederick, Prince of Wales, had died young in 1751, leaving little George the heir to the throne. He was a popular and careful king who insisted on reading all government papers which came his way, but at the same time he was also keen to let Parliament get on with their business without always trying to take charge. George III was a man of culture. He started a royal collection of books. 65,000 of these were later given to the British Museum. Founded and paid for the Royal Academy of Arts, which still exists today, and had his own astronomical laboratory. He was so interested in science that he bought his own scientific instruments, many of which you can now see in the Science Museum in London. As if all this wasn't enough, he even found time to be interested in farming, especially at Windsor Castle, which earned him the nickname Farmer George. George III was the victim of an illness, which has subsequently been suggested may have been porphyria. That began in 1788. At this time the king was found talking to an oak tree in Windsor Park, believing that he was in conversation with the King of Prussia. George recovered at first, but would be plagued by illness over the final decades of his life. This meant that, at times, he was unfit to rule, and power had to be passed to his son, who became the Prince Regent, or ruling prince. Eventually the king suffered a period of illness from which he would not recover, spending his final years in confusion at Windsor Castle. Very sad end for a thoughtful and dedicated ruler. Now we go on to George IV. George IV lived between the 12th of August 1762 and the 26th of June 1830, and he reigned between the 29th of January 1820 and the 26th of June 1830. Unlike his well-behaved father, George IV was a king of the old Stuart mould. He loved to have a roaring good time. He grew fat on fine food and wine, and his only exercise was chasing women. Parliament did its best to limit his powers while he was Prince Regent, a role he held while his father was sick and unable to reign. But when he finally did become king, he had the most extravagant and extraordinary coronation in British history. George lived a life of extravagant luxury and scandalous behaviour. His debts began to increase almost immediately, as did his weight. Getting fatter didn't stop George from pursuing numerous women. His behaviour was so scandalous that not only was his father shocked, but the British public too. George wasn't a stupid man. He had many friends, including some in Parliament, such as the famous politician Charles Fox, and threw stupendous parties. At one of his parties there was a running stream down the middle of the table with real goldfish in it. When George III fell ill and was unable to reign, the prince was appointed regent, and he continued as regent during all of the periods of his father's illness, a position that gave him only limited royal power. He finally became king upon his father's death in 1820, but by this time George himself was in failing health. Years of an appalling diet and extravagant lifestyle had taken their toll. The new king still loved a good party though, and what better excuse than a coronation? The coronation of George IV was the most lavish in British history. The king wore a crimson velvet train 27 feet long and a crown decorated with 12,000 diamonds. The years of his reign saw George turn to an increasingly private life owing to his poor health and lack of interest in the practical business of ruling. George IV was enormous. He reportedly ate 2 pigeons and 3 steaks every day for breakfast, washed down with a few glasses of alcohol. He wore a corset in an attempt to streamline his figure. arranged to have one child together, a daughter named Charlotte, before going their separate ways. Caroline was barred from George's coronation, but insisted on showing up anyway, trying to force her way in. The doors were slammed in her face. Later, George would put his estranged wife on trial for adultery. Just because he didn't want her didn't mean she should be available to anyone else. George IV may have become an extravagant spender, but it wasn't all for nothing. He purchased some incredibly important works of art, which are now in the royal collection, transformed Windsor Castle and Buckingham Palace, and built the Royal Pavilion at Brighton. He commissioned the architect John Nash not only for work on the palace, but also to design Regent Street and Regent's Park in London, along with Oxford Circus and Piccadilly Circus. And so that ends this section. Next, we will begin with William IV, the Sailor King. This has been Kate at the Library Whispers